So he's about to take y'all to church.
No, jeez.
Y'all ready for the hallelujah? Please welcome to the stage, Marcus Amaker.
As a spoken word poet, I saunter off on Tuesdays to scream from a soapbox on the sidewalks. Stanzas scribbled out on sandpaper are smoothed out for the stage. I stitch thoughts together and slide between the sheets as I sleep. It becomes my second skin, and I stick metaphors in my pen for self-gratification. It's better than sex. And more colorful than Saturday morning cartoons, I spit like I'm Superman, swooping through the words and fighting off the verbs I've scratched out on small pieces of paper. It obsesses me and undresses me from normal conversation, so I sit naked in a sea of ink stains and swim through an endless stream of inspiration, searching for the spark that will help me start the process again, like my love's lips licking lollipops, leaving me lusting for the low end of her landscape. I'd willingly allow her to leak endorphins into my wounds until my darkened scars become illuminated and my inhibitions become emancipated. Loneliness. Leave your lack of passion at home and listen as I look inside of the silence for a lullaby, to lull us into dreams with our arms locked into each other and our arms locked into the language of sleep's heartbeat, lust. Don't kill this fantasy. This is love. This is your spirit being lifted. This is learning to live wicked. This is our bodies all formless and twisted like liquid. Love, this is not a fantasy. Thank you. Can I get everybody to say, ooh-wee? Ooh-wee! Nice, I love that. Do it again. Ooh-wee! No, sorry. On three. 1, 2, 3. Ooh-wee! Awesome. All right, so this is a poem about our city and the ever-evolving energy of our city. We are the composers of midnight flames whose names get lost in the speed of sound. We pound our heartbeats deep in the streets, then reap from the rhythm of light conversation. Our echoed vibrations are wired together, guiding us home for a walk in the dark. We pound our heartbeats deep in the streets, then reap from the rhythm of light conversation. We live in Charleston, South Carolina, where the sidewalks scream on Saturday nights and the corners rotate budding musicians with skin-tight dreams, where strings of pearls search for salvation, then sweat out their frustrations on the backs of rooftops, where the homeless sprout like weeds through concrete, seeking $2, a handshake, and a little bit of sunshine, where the humidity chokes you out of your breath, but you still manage to speak to the spit-shine waiters who serve $95 bottles of wine. And 2 blocks away, a $5 pitcher of liquid gold spills on the canvas of sticky floors, and love lingers on cobblestone streets and narrow alleyways, and the smell of sex is the foundation for first and last impressions. We live in Charleston. Seeing people gasp for air from knee-deep bills and dirt-cheap thrills, and those with no sense of history's melody sync with the songs of the city's slaves. And the poets, we scrape stanzas off of street lights, and if we scream loud enough, maybe someone will hear, because we live in Charleston, and I see poems everywhere in my neighborhood. They write themselves, stumbling the winter's relentless stare and blinded by the bluntness of spring. They surround you before you slip into the sweet darkness of a sour night, sorting through a history of scrambled words. I am clearly the tongue-tied baby of the family, the wide-eyed wanderer who finally found a home, walking past the broken-down buildings that hold the streets together and having real conversations with America, admiring her ball gowns down one-way streets while washing off the doom of her repugnant perfume. I see poems everywhere in my neighborhood. They are the graffiti artists of the sky, the endless phone numbers typed in the cell phones, the puddles of rain that linger like alcohol on an unholy city, searching for God amongst the ghosts within. Thank you. Really cool stage here. I was kind of hoping people would be in the round, so I had this challenge of like, who I look at. But thank you all for being an awesome audience and supporting poetry. This is really great. We are in the process of doing a lot of really big things. There will be a poetry festival by the end of the year. So we're gonna ask for donations to help that happen, but we want it to be a week-long sort of thing. More information about that will be coming soon. So I put out this little book called Mantra last year, and I self-published this book and designed it. And one of the beautiful things about a self-published book, it can be an evolving thing. So I definitely am going to keep editing the book, keep adding poetry as well. So this is the new edition of it. I'm going to read some poems from it. This one is called "And We Are the Flawless." God took a selfie before the Big Bang and noticed the sadness in his eyes. Loneliness covered his face in darkness. Depression awakened the need for light. Heaven was a tiny house with just enough room for God to meditate and dream of a universe devoid of vanity. Soon, space expanded from a single snapshot, and time took a holy moment to reveal itself. And God finally felt beautiful. We liked everything he posted on his profile, the mountains, the constellations, the birds, the trees, but we grew to be clusters of galaxies slowly drifting apart because of our gravitational pull towards stardom. We obsess over ourselves as if we are not a mirror image of intelligent design, as if our brains are incapable of infinite wisdom. But our spirit is the synonym of perfection, and we are the flawless reflection of a photo of the universe cocooned in skin without any filters. So one of the things that I share, one of the many things I share with Derek, I remember hearing a poem that Derek wrote about his speech impediment when he was younger. I also had / have a speech impediment, and it's so interesting to me when I'm up on the stage, very clear, but as soon as I get off the stage and one-on-one is where things happen. So I decided to sort of write about that because I've always been afraid to write about it or talk about it. It's just been this thing that I've held on to, and this is part of the letting go. It's called Self-Portrait. When I was in the 8th grade, I wore baggy pants and my book bag on my chest because I was not bold enough to throw the monkey off my back. Inside of the backpack was a lack of confidence weighing me down. I had not found my voice. This is the portrait of a black boy in bloom, the brown-eyed baby whose birth's purpose was to unearth poems. When I was in the 9th grade, I became brilliant at being silent and building up barriers, lost in the soundproof walls of my mind, trying to find my voice. This is the portrait of a bashful teenager in bloom, blind to the way he was bruising his inner strength, searching and searching for a voice. Then poetry saved me. Poetry brought me back to my core. Poetry blossomed the boy who didn't know he had wings. Poetry made me sing. When I was sitting down to write this poem, I brushed off any bad feelings about myself because I broke free from the monkey on my back and unpacked a beautiful, booming, blissful, and brave voice. This is the portrait of me now. All right, on the count of 3, say, ooh-wee. 1, 2, 3. Ooh-wee. Nice. Awesome. I remember doing that once show and nobody said anything. I'm like, wow, nobody's listening. That's great. You guys are awesome. So this explains itself. This is called Mahogany. Who decided to call us black and white? When I look at my skin, I don't see black. I see brown. Brown, like the color of sand, a brilliant tan that needs no sun. Brown, like the mahogany tree bark grounded in the summer whose green leaves make the transition into fall, coffee stained by the autumn's cool breeze. Who decided to call us black and white? When I look at my wife, I don't see white, I see brown, just a lighter shade than mine. Brown is the cinnamon that colors her iris. Brown are the arms that wrap around me during a bronze sunset. Brown are the layered bricks of our home's foundation. Who decided to call us black and white? When I look at all of you, I see shades of brown, a sea of one color, ripples of love floating along a sea change. There are so many words used to divide us, to fool us into seeing ourselves through foggy lenses. We are more than a box-checked statistic. We are more than a census. I am not black or white. I am awake. Thank you. About that a lot, just the words that we use to divide us, and it's just this narrative that we have, and the media definitely feeds into that. It's like, black people say this, white people say this. It's like they're feeding this narrative into us that isn't true. It's crazy. All right, so I wrote this being drunk at a bar. Very deep meaning, very deep. But it's so interesting to write that story when you're observing people. This is called the youth decay. Remember the honey-dipped sound of sin stretched out through smoke-drenched sorrow, where strangers dance to the backbeat of 80s music, tickling their hips. Remember how I burned with fire as my hands stayed curved along the icy cold slope of slippery cocktails. Remember the sound of alarm clocks and grown children scrambling for their mothers, masked in youth and perfumed skin. Remember how you looked at me to see yourself because all of the mirrors were broken and you saw how beautiful you were. Remember the moment you turned your back and I whispered lust because I knew you wouldn't hear. Remember the empty conversations that echoed through the scandals taking place in the room next door, down the street, and on cell phones. Remember life as a perfect narrative succumbing to imperfection once the lines begin to blur. Remember the wet sound of truth quenching the thirst of dried up lovers before eventually bathing in little white lies. I will remember my fingernails on strangers, leaving masks and marks on the decay of the night. So, need audience participation. When I say, the smoke is everywhere, you say, I can't breathe. The smoke is everywhere.
I can't breathe.
All right, louder than that. The smoke is everywhere.
I can't breathe.
The smoke is everywhere.
I can't breathe.
2 words with 2 G's spread hate like a disease. The smoke is everywhere.
I can't breathe.
I can't remember the poem. Wait a second. Pause. Pause. Oh yes. It only took one arm to squeeze the life out of an unarmed man. The only thing in his hands were the lifelines embedded on his palms. Now, we stand on the front line singing songs of injustice. We are slaves to the melody, and we will hum the tune while digging graves for another life gone too soon. 2 words with 2 G's spread hate like a disease. The smoke is everywhere.
I can't breathe.
What kind of world do we live in where women and men have to fight for the right to love? What kind of world do we live in where a private union is a public sin? It's the same world where Charles Manson can easily get a marriage license from jail. Is love for sale? Or is it in the hands of politicians whose lifelines have long since lost their way, whose want for one is greater than the needs of all, taking negative steps on the path toward enlightenment? The math doesn't add up. 2 words with 2 G's spread hate like a disease. The smoke is everywhere.
I can't breathe.
Speaking of math, television promotes division. We are losers in the war for ratings. It's the great divide, and we can't hide from the deception. Be mindful of the way truth is portrayed, or your mind will sway toward a negative perception. But if we all open up our hands, we will see that we are united by the lifelines embedded on our palms. Do not deny this connection. 2 words with 2 G's spread hate like a disease. The smoke is everywhere.
I can't breathe.
This is not a black or white thing. This is a human rights thing. This is not a black or white thing. This is a human rights thing. No more body bags need to become hashtags. Thank you. So I was asked by the city paper to write a poem about the Emmanuel 9. And this is the poem that came out of that. It's called Black Cloth. Racism, let us no longer walk in your shoes. You are a traveler of darkness, a walker of shadows, cloaking yourself in a black cloth like the Grim Reaper, and arming your soul with the tools of a terrorist, a misguided soldier who's trying to start a war. My sisters, heaven was as close as your breath that night. You came to Mother Emmanuel to worship in the glow of God and speak the light that flows from love. How beautiful of him to hear your words and lift you into the arms of Christ. My brothers, you walked toward heaven with focus, even when your shoes were stained with the dirt of intolerance. A black cloth lay silent at Clementa's seat, resting under a single rose. It was taken from our city's soil, where seeds of faith continue to grow. Charleston, I see heaven in your tears and feel the weight of sadness in your voice. I've seen strangers hold hands as the sun wraps us in unbearable heat. I've watched children of contradiction come together for the unity of the holy city. But South Carolina, 9 members of your family are now in heaven, and you have to confront the reality of racism, the dusk of pain, the lightlessness of the dawn. Because I would rather hang a black cloth on a flagpole than give the Confederate flag another glimpse of the sun. Thank you. And this is another one about the Emmanuel 9. Clearly this is the light portion of the evening, so sorry to bring the mood down, but it's a very crazy heavy thing. It's the biggest understatement ever, but it's just been it's so interesting to think about time. Like, we're almost a year after the shooting. It doesn't make any sense to me, but this is called Circadian Rhythms. At ground zero of death, the voice of God will sound like an alarm clock, waking you up from a dream. You open your eyes and see yourself not as a woman or a man, but as a spirit who had been breathing in an illusion. On June 18th, the voice of God sounded like an alarm clock and woke us up from a nightmare. It was the day after a massacre, when illusion became reality, when darkness was a dagger in our hearts. From this day forward, the voice of God sounds like an alarm clock, waking us up from a dream. Our eyes are now open to the restlessness of our souls as we confront the relentlessness of racism. I will not rest until we can sleep peacefully again. Thank you. so now it's time for some love poems. Next month, I'm gonna be married for 1 year. Nice. Sweet. I'm glad nobody was like, boo, you know. Really bad. I'm like, all right, so I'm a huge music fanatic, and this is about my wife in terms of music. It's weird. I just realized. Okay, so it's called Surround Sound. I'm gonna embarrass her. If our love is a record player, then our bodies are the speakers. My voice is wired into you, and this poem will shine a light on the revolution of our union as we find the grooves within each other. Side 1, track 1. The needle drops to expose the clarity that lies within the dust of life. You are my wife, my rock, my soul, my rhythm and blues. Track 2. The sound fills up the room where silence and doubt used to be. I lay comfortably in the reputation of this repetition and the spinning stillness of ambience that now represents me. Track 3. She plays my heart like the harp strings of Alice Coltrane. I am the notes on a page that echo and endure. Track 4. Even when we are out of tune, we know that every muffled melody will eventually fade. Every skip is just a beat too heavy with pride, and we'll break on through to the other side. Side 2. If our love is a record player, then our bodies are the speakers. My mind is wired into you, and these words are the lyrics I'll sing above the static of mundane language. Thank you. And another love poem. So this is an interesting poem because I wrote this, I believe it was a week before we started dating, which is crazy. So it was almost like I was putting this out into the world, you know, and it totally happened. This is called Faith. Because I am ready for love, I walk toward the present without a receipt of the past in my pocket, freeing myself from the future fantasy that unfolds in my mind. Because I am ready for love, my canvas contains more than just variations of black and white, because life is more than just black and white opposing itself in colorful conflict. Because I am ready for love, your hands feel familiar as if we were never strangers, fumbling through forced first impressions. Because I am ready for love, there is no burden in death or belief in the separation of solitude, because we will be connected forever. Just when you think your heart only beats for the dark, a light overtakes silence and a jazz band steps on stage. The music swirls around your glass. Each note gets in your blood and you are dizzy with love. You've heard this song before, but not like this. It's like the singer knows your kiss and each note is impossible to miss. Hold your applause, because this might last forever. Instead, pause. And be aware of the encore that's happening at this very moment. It taps you on the shoulder after you've danced with complacency, and suddenly you're face to face with a woman who's never played an instrument like this before. Just when you think your heart only beats for the dark, you find yourself lightheaded, wrapping your mind around the wonders of the music and waiting for the miracle to happen. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna read, I guess, a couple more. I don't know where we are at time, but
I don't know either.
Okay. All right, so how many of you know who Denmark Vesey is? Sweet. All right, yeah, very important figure to know in American history. There's a statue of him in Hampton Park. He was born into slavery here and did a slave revolt, but he was ratted out and he was hung somewhere in Charleston. But there's a statue to him in Hampton Park, and this is dedicated to him. It's called Brother Denmark. The history books tell us that you won your freedom when you won the lottery, but freedom isn't something you win. Freedom is a birthright. Freedom is as seamless as your name, even when it was changed by a captain who claimed to control the sea. But God is the only one in control. It was God who put dreams in your head as you lay in slumber as a servant, bound by chains and bound by the definition of faith, a strong or unshakable belief in something. Be the traveler who discovered strength in the uncertainty of the ocean. Be the carpenter who laid the foundation for rebellion. Be the revolutionary who pushed for resistance. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Denmark, a statue of you stands strong against the backdrop of a perfect painting. The Low Country, who wiped off the dust of your death in its vanity while living in the shadows of slavery. Denmark, you are the brother for dreamers who have heard the harsh alarm clock of reality ringing in our ears and waking us up to the importance of history. Denmark, I stand before you now as a witness to your story. My home is an echo away from plantations, silently standing on your foundation. Thank you all for being an awesome audience. I think I'm gonna do 2 more and then we'll take a little break. 1, 2, 3. Nice. All right, so this just proves that I'm a dork. I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and I'm a big fan of The Matrix and Spider-Man and Lord of the Rings, all types of stuff. Yeah, right? So this is called The Power of the Pen, and every time I read this for kids, man, they love this poem. Like, I'm reading them, poems about church shootings, and I'm like, what's this about, But then I read the Star Wars poem, and they're like, yeah, this is great. So I need more poems like this. But anyway, The Power of the Pen. Sometimes my pen feels like a magic staff, and I am a white-haired wizard walking through a forest of unfinished tales, waging war against monsters of indecision, calling on the spirits to guide me. Sometimes my pen is a lightsaber constructed by the gods, and I can move metaphors with my mind, shifting them between time and planets of poems, avoiding the pull of gravity and insecurity. Sometimes a web of words sticks to walls, and I spend all night climbing to catch them, spinning stanzas and swinging through an emotional skyline. Sometimes I wish I took the blue pill instead of swallowing reality to see non-fiction and its relentless ugliness, uprooted by illusion. Sometimes I'm human, and my only strength is a microphone by my side, plugged in and amplified to transform my voice from a whisper to its full potential of power. All right, one last thing for my last poem. Everybody pull out your cell phones. Go to your app store. Yeah, pull out your cell phones. Go to your app store and search for Charleston Poetry. I have an app, and I will push poems out to people. I'm going to be pushing a poem out very soon. I wrote a poem about Prince, or writing a poem about Prince, but I was too emotional to read it tonight. But anyway, yeah, I have a free app, so I would love for you guys to get that and interact with the poetry that way. Also, the books are $5. Would love...
Only $5?
Yes, and they're over there. I would love to sell you guys some of these.
Are you reading anywhere else this week? Are you doing anything else?
Nowhere else this week.
You sure?
Yeah, what's
On Saturday?
Oh, yes, Saturday!
Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday. We're going to be at Marion Square, the farmers market, doing some poetry on the stage there. And we're going to have a typewriter as well. And we're going to be writing poems for people for $1. You can come up and we can write a poem for you. So yeah, come out to the farmers market on Saturday. I hope the weather's good. I just thought about that. But yeah, it's going to be me, Derek, some other poets. You guys can come as well. It's all good. So anyway, all right. Thank you all for listening. Every moment That you are alive is the only moment that matters. The past is a glass house, and we throw stones trying to shatter walls that need to come down. We are all architects of negativity, brick by brick of bold thoughts holding together bodies bound by blood but burned by love, so we let bugs into our house. And each infestation is a manifestation of our own insecurity until the walls come down. Be aware of the model you are building. Allow enough room for God. Give Jesus the floor plan. Let Buddha have a spare key so that he may open up the blinds when you are blind to your own light. Let your home be a haven for heaven, but dig deep if the walls need to come down. I have been known to cling to clutter. I have been known to sit comfortably in uncomfortable chairs. I have been known to keep friendships when they do nothing but harm. What about you? Do you sound an alarm when your foundation is on fire, or do you fan the flames long enough for 5 o'clock to roll around? Well, this is not happy hour. This is not the time to spend sitting 8 hours behind the desk of your own shadow. This is the time for a new revolution where love is the solution to the troubles of the world, with weapons of mass reconstruction, rebuilding houses whose walls need to come down. And people are insane, living like zombies, blindly walking, even stalking themselves, staring at computer screens that poison their pockets and claiming the key to a connection is really an infection of the mind. We are born with the breath of rhythm, yet we cut the cords of our connection and we find ourselves stuck at the intersection between freedom and ego. But which way will you go when your walls need to come down? People always say, live each day like it's your last. Why not live like it's your first? Come out of your mind like you came out of the womb and open yourself up to the beauty of unknowing. Be present in the present. The future is now, and you wrote the book, but there is no price plan for prayer, no index for indecisiveness, no glossy magazine that gives you glory. You are here, and you learn to walk without worry, and questions wash over you like memories, and you wake up and realize you had the answers all along. And you are free to just be and breathe. Instead of holding your breath for death, to grab a hold of your soul and push you into another world of unknowing. People always say, live each day like it's your last. Why not live like it's your first? Drink wine for the first time. Redefine what it means to be beautiful. Grow old gracefully without putting cobwebs in the back